we can't wait. The fire's not waiting for permission to put it out.
Any inaction results in loss, and we don't want loss of life, loss of resources, loss of land, loss of our livestock. There's too much at stake for us to be idle.
That's a scene from Yellowhead County, Alberta, where ranchers are taking matters into their own hands and doing what they can to fight the fires around them. Welcome to About That. I'm Lauren Bird in for Andrew Chang. It's a sign of how desperate people are getting after several weeks of intense wildfires. There are 87 fires currently burning in the province. Tens of thousands of people have had to leave their homes and communities.
There's nothing left. It's all gone. Everything we planned for 40 years is gone.
And I see my house, it was just totally destroyed. Like I was totally lost. Your life goes into limbo because you don't know where you're going to live. You don't know what you're going to do next. You don't know anything.
Well, very upset. Yeah. Feel like crying right now. Yeah. So, what do? You
roll with the punches and make the best of what you have. Well, you just try to go day by day and sort of put it in the back of your mind. You can't think about it all the time.
It's heartbreaking because people are stuck out of their homes. People have been moved out of hospitals. People don't have the ability to get home.
I think it's just when you think about the fears and you know, everything that is at stake, but it's been so much more than the loss of our home, just the box that we live in. It's the loss of our jobs, the loss of our entire community.
Many lives have been changed forever, and officials say the province hasn't reached its peak burning period yet. So it could get worse before it gets better. And it's easy to forget that in the midst of all of this, there's still a race going on in Alberta to see who will become the next premier. Alberta is halfway through its election campaign, and the wildfires have been raging for most of it. To break down how the leaders have been handling this crisis and the challenges that could lie ahead, we reached out to CBC Calgary producer and writer Jason Markusoff. I spoke with him yesterday. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Lauren.
Okay, so there's a lot of devastation. People are having to leave their communities. They've left their homes. They're really looking to the government right now. And this is the first time that we've seen Danielle Smith really handle a crisis like this. So how's she been responding to that challenge?
Pretty standard. As you said, this is the first time I've seen Danielle Smith handle a crisis, but there's been sadly a lot of crisis in Alberta, a lot of natural disasters or other disasters. Rachel Notley, when she was premier 7 years ago, had the Fort McMurray wildfire that destroyed much of that town. Jason Kenney, the premier before Smith, of course, had COVID, and now Danielle Smith has these wildfires, this rash of wildfires all over northern and central Alberta.
On average, just to put this into perspective, over the past 5 years between January and May, by this time, we normally only have 546 hectares burned. But this year, that number is 410,441 hectares. So that gives you some idea of why this is such an unprecedented and extraordinary event.
It's, you know, she has sort of split life right now. She's doing some campaign stuff, some doing aerial touring of the wildfires or meeting with her cabinet emergency committee. It's, you know, she is performing like a premier normally does in this case, and it is a chance for Albertans to see her in that mode while simultaneously running, you know, fighting this election to serve the next 4 years.
Right, and you mentioned Rachel Notley there. How is she dealing with this throughout this campaign?
No, she's being careful not to be critical of Danielle Smith in her wildfire premier mode. They've been more in solidarity with each other, holding a meeting together last week, even going to tour the evacuation center together last week. She's offering her insight from her time managing the Fort McMurray wildfire, but she has to walk a fine line.
It is a very unique situation to have a government have to flip out of what is normally caretaker mode during an election in order to ensure a balanced election environment into government mode. And when you do that for the sake of a public emergency, which this is, there are very few precedents.
She's criticizing Danielle Smith for what she's going to do, what she has said in the past, not being critical of her performance in the fire. I think there's a bit of a delicacy there that neither side really wants to be seen as making too much hay of the wildfire, being seen as trying to use it as a cudgel against one another.
Right, but there has been some criticism of the government's handling in the last few years. There were cuts to some of the firefighting efforts there, right? Some of the teams?
The previous premier under the UCP, Jason Kenney, his first budget in office cut one of the rappel teams, this team that would come down in helicopters and attack wildfires early on. So that team is no longer in commission. A lot of those former team members and a lot of other firefighting experts say that could have helped. Of course, caveat on could. Nothing is going to, perfectly solve wildfires. These are pretty challenging developments. Notley is not criticizing that. Partly probably because she has some other hair on her in her record. When she was in office, they cut the wildfire budget a fair bit too when they were fighting deficits. So neither side is pure on having fully funded wildfire effort in the budget.
Right, and from what we understand about climate change, experts are saying that these fires like this we're just going to be seeing them more often in the future. And so whoever is elected presumably is going to have to deal with this, create policies. Like, how is that playing into all of this?
Neither of them have a wildfire platform exactly yet. Neither of them are talking a lot about climate change, period. Of course, in Alberta, there's always this sensitivity where, talking about overly aggressive carbon emissions plans could impact the oil economy, which fuels so much of this province. There's this delicacy there. Neither side is really talking about the impact of climate change, making the weather hotter, making firefighters more intense. That's what the science says. Neither politician is saying that, even though Notley tends to be more, into talking about climate change than Danielle Smith, who used to question the science of climate change. We'll see. There's a debate later this week. We'll see if that comes into this discussion, but thus far it has not.
And the election has been playing out a little differently in different parts of the province. Can you explain that?
If you're in Edmonton, there are thousands of evacuees who've had to find home in the Expo Center, one of the big conference centers, or find, stay with family. So I feel like it may have more of an impact on people's minds, the wildfires in the north, whereas in the south here in Calgary, which is of course where a lot of the big swing ridings are, kind of where the election will be fought and won probably, people aren't thinking about it. So other issues wind up coming in, like some of the policies, taxation plans, some of the controversial comments from Danielle Smith that are coming up, leadership issues unrelated to the fire. People will probably be thinking about it somewhat here, but far less so than they are in the north.
Is it affecting their campaigns? Are people taking that into consideration?
There are some local campaigns in the wildfire zone in the northern western area of the province. Those campaigns are suspended or on hold. People there are probably paying more attention to what the weather is like and what the wildfire activity is like than who's up, who's down, especially because those are pretty strong UCP areas. Danielle Smith is doing this back and forth situation. She's spending more time in Edmonton probably than she wanted to because of the focus on the wildfire. She's having more of a relationship with Justin Trudeau, her erstwhile enemy, during this because she has to talk about the military, talk about federal responses.
During our call, Prime Minister Trudeau confirmed that the military will be sent to assist if necessary. We will continue to keep communication channels open with the federal government as we respond to this unprecedented situation.
Notley is doing what Notley does, staying in Calgary mostly. So it's a strange feature of the election. I'm not sure if it's totally changing the narrative of the election, but it's this very, very strange element in what we all knew was going to be a very fascinating election.
And is there a chance that the election might get postponed because of the fires?
So that's something that comes up. We've heard some local politicians in the active wildfire zone talking about that.
This election is nothing but a distraction at this point when we, the Albertans, need every government official to roll up their sleeves and fight for this province before we don't have a province to come back to.
The way it works is that Elections Alberta would have to individually appeal for each riding to have a delay if things were really, really bad. And then a judge would have to accept them in 1 or 2 or 3 or however many ridings. But that would be, things would have to get pretty bad for that to happen. Elections Alberta has contingencies. In fact, they were out talking about their contingency plans right away, that maybe if there's a wildfire has damaged a polling station, or maybe people can't go in to vote in their home district, they can go vote elsewhere. So it's more likely, unless things go really, really bad in a lot of Alberta, that the voting will go on as planned.
Okay, wow. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Jason Markusoff, thank you so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure.